alive. Good morning. It is Friday today. I am reading Joan Marshall Grant, Speaking from the Heart. This is a book about her and of her, about ethics, reincarnation, and what it means to be human. It was edited by Nicola Bennett, Jane Law, and Sophia Rossoff, and was published 2007, and describes much about the life and the methods of Joan Marshall Grant. She passed away in 1989, and this book is what it says about these matters. I've read about her, out of this book before, in the early part of this year, but I read a couple of other books in between, and I'm back to this one because it's a very good book, and I haven't read it myself, so I continue. We are at questions and answers here, and it's the period between 1958 and 1970 of her life. These are question and answers, as I said. Far memory. Question: what are the advantages and disadvantages of having far memory? Joan: the advantages include knowing as a fact that death is only an episode which one has often experienced, and that therefore is not terrifying. Another advantage is that one is not taken in by the nonsense which is often taught under the label of religion. Hellfire and eternal damnation and a God of wrath, who is much more cruel and vengeful than even the most horrible human father is likely to be. One knows that those who are more evolved than we are, therefore more compassionate and more lovable than human beings. The disadvantages are that one remembers living in cultures which were infinitely better than the 20th century, which is inclined to make one homesick. And one also remembers horrific incidents, such as being tortured and persecuted, which removes the cozy illusion that this cannot happen to me. Question: do you think everyone would benefit from having far memory? Joan: no, I think it would add to most people's burdens. The purpose of being alive is to learn how to behave here and now. Brooding over the past would most likely make them either feel hard done by or else intolerably guilty. After all, people develop a subconscious mind so as to avoid having to face behavior which they know to be discreditable, even during their current lifetime. A person with a far memory lacks a set of barriers which others possess, so they hold in their preconscious what others hold in their unconscious. At least they have a much larger preconscious and a much smaller unconscious. I am continuing. This was at the chapter 11 of this part of this book, and I continue with chapter 12, After Many Lifetimes is the title. Many Lifetimes was the title of the book that Joan and Dennis struggled to write together about their work and beliefs. It was difficult. The professional author and the professional psychiatrist each found their patch intruded upon. Originally intended to be little more than a tidied-up version of their US lectures, the book was eventually finished in 1967. It consists of 8 alternating chapters, based on the lectures plus an extra one each. Joan's was about the ghosts she had come across at various times during her life, and Dennis, the last one, was about Ray, a patient who had come to them in 1959 and who had become a dear friend. In 1966, Ray was diagnosed with breast cancer, which swiftly developed secondaries and became inoperable. They became closely involved in helping her to die with as little pain and fear as possible. Joan, keeping an eye out for Ray on the upstairs level via echo symptoms experienced in her own body and nightly dreams, and Dennis using hypnosis downstairs to relieve her symptoms. At this time, they were working together closely. Dennis, who had discovered a facility for hypnosis early in his career, employed it on patients who needed to try and recall an episode from a previous life as part of their treatment, he would call upon Joan to tune in if the patient seemed to be in distress or trouble, or if they were having difficulty remembering by themselves. Joan talked about all this in a lecture of 1969. The ability to tune in to the relevant episode of a patient's earlier life has been very helpful in my current one. As I cannot induce hypnosis, it often enabled me to help the patients I treated before I began to work with Dennis. And now that we work together, it enables me sometimes to provide a check on the validity of a patient's hypnotic regression. The fact that I can remember many of my own deaths, which are difficult to recall because the actual transition is as trivial as the shift from waking to sleeping, has also been reassuring to the people whom I have been privileged to be with when they were dying. They found it comforting that I could tell them so emphatically that I knew rather than only believed what I was telling them. Some of you may have read the final chapter of Many Lifetimes, which describes how Dennis and I were able to help Ray, a woman very close to us both, who was dying of cancer, and how very easy it was to cross the river. Our contact with her has remained unbroken, and she is an even closer friend than she was before. She so cheerfully and confidently shed her physical body. While Dennis discovered that he too could talk to Ray upstairs, Joan was becoming better at remembering what happened when she shifted level. By keeping a percentage of her attention available downstairs, Jo was able to write the experience or guidance down herself, rather than depending on others to act as scribe. On some occasions, Joan would shift levels suddenly, slipping out without warning. On others, she would feel the imminence of a hove building up for several hours as she did other things, often pottering around the house, making soup or arranging flowers. The writings that follow are examples of Joan's thoughts and jottings from that period. I do what I do because I am what I am. The difference between down here and one level up is that upstairs you are never lonely. One aim is to be able to say, I do what I do because I am what I am, without expectation of plaudits or fear of blame. When you're a self-controlling wheel, you are one with plants, animals, babies, sages. Saints should never be necessary. They only become necessary since the terrible hearsay that Christ died for us rather than the real truth to show us how we can love so as not to be lonely. And I will tell you, a saint is a very easy thing and a very difficult thing. A saint is only somebody who stays among the lonely to assure them that ahead of them there is no more loneliness, that there is no more division between man and woman or between child and sage. Heaven is only not being lonely. Heaven is only being in company. I seek no plaudits and I fear no blame. The basic ethics on which one's behavior should be based is, I seek no plaudits and I fear no blame, except from my immediate superior whose pupil I am. If I confuse myself by listening to the plaudits or to the blame of those who inhabit the environment in which I find myself, I will inevitably tend to remain in it, either because I find the praise of my companions so sweet that I am too slothful to discard it, or their blame so acid that from it I will cringe and to retreat down the ladder of my evolution. But if I am a faithful pupil, therefore in my turn a faithful teacher to my pupils, I will know that I can act according to my heart, in true faith to my squire only if I keep faith with myself, and do what I do because I am what I am. For the true vows of a page unto his squire are the same as the true vows of a squire unto his overlord, and the same as the true vows of a lord unto his king, or the true vows of a king unto his saint, or the true vows of a saint upon his archangel, or the true vows of an archangel into his God, and the true vows of a god unto his overlord, and thereafter certainty, after certainty, beyond the horizons of mortal imagination, the majesty of infinite adoration. Each one of us should know that when we keep faith with the imperishable hierarchy, we keep faith with our page and with our overlord. We listen so that we may learn. We speak so that we may teach. This is one of the expressions of the imperishable Trinity. We should live and act and above all feel in such a way that our pages may burnish their integrity by our example, and we should live and act above all feel in such a way that our overlords feel strengthened and enabled and rejoice in the honourable fealty of their squires, so that thus strengthened and ennobled our overlords will cherish our kings and give unto them kindly counsel, and so henceforth a sweet ferment rises through the firmament. But page or overlord or squire or saint, you have a most simple, gentle duty by which to acknowledge us as part of you. Remember that your pupil and your teacher are with you always, unless you shut them from your heart. Act in such a way as you will like your pupil to emulate. Feel in such a way as will cause your teacher to smile upon you in goodly satisfaction. If you will allow yourself to live in constant awareness that you, unless you steadfastly deny them, are in the constant presence of your pupil and your teacher, you will never again be lonely. You will never betray yourself, and you will never cause either of them to feel the desolation of the omnipresent, which has been made to feel unwanted. Remember, you are always in company. Remember that solitude is an illusion. Remember that before the page can love the other pages, or the squire the other squires, or an overlord the other overlords, he must first learn and teach, accept and give, be loved and loving. I'm okay. To love is to know. Conditions. Found I had a very pronounced third eye at approximately 10 a.m. and mentioned this to Kay, who was intently writing. Felt the urge to tidy, so did so in bedroom, and then prepared to do letter chores, feeling rather indignant that I should have to do so when I feel a hove was close. So decided, as it is a gloriously sunny day, that I would give myself an hour off. Off from what? And make a spring flower arrangement. Take white Chinese bowl into the garden and first dig up 4 shamrocks to make a background. Then 4 striped crocus, 3 dandelions, 2 tulips, and many violets. Find it necessary to wash all the earth from roots of shamrock, and then to place each flower in a way that would ensure its maximum freedom and water. Go again into garden, pick more violets. Then feel I must write something. Go back to desk, and at first am thwarted, because there is nothing to write with. After searching, find a pen that still works. To love is to know, knowledge being the ability to see, to evaluate what is. But first, one must see. Without sight there is no love, save the illusion that love can exist in the absence of the recognition of reality. Love thy neighbor was the advice given when the Galilean knew he had failed, for he always overestimated his pupils and absurdly overestimated his audience. He was dying and knew this was a most vital instruction to see thy neighbor, know thy neighbor. Seeing and knowing being the vital components of love meant recognize him for who and what he is. Love thy enemies meant see where your and therefore our enemies are. They may be disguised as mother or father, child or leader, or above all as priest. Do not be blinded by relationships or creeds or color. See, know. If you love, which is to see and to know, then you will not be absorbed by your enemies. And by enemies, I mean the non-pattern part of other people and the non-pattern part of yourself. Love implies sanity, and sanity is the ability to know what is, and therefore the ability not to be deluded by what is not. Why is it so difficult to be honest? Because to be completely honest requires complete love. The knowledge of what is and what is not, the good and the bad, the pattern and the non-pattern. To see all is to know all. To know all is to love all, but love is never blind. Love does not increase the loved one's stature by a cupid, nor diminish it by a grain of dust. Love is, and therefore is, imperishable. I stopped this reading here. It continues in chapter 12 on the next reading.